again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Koberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Brian Koberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. I don't know why I come out sometimes on the side. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel, and tonight we're getting back into the Nancy Guthrie abduction and disappearance. I got an email not too long ago with some interesting points, a couple of emails actually, and I wanted to go through some of those points with you guys. They asked some of the hard-hitting questions about certain things, and I thought it'd be great to share my thoughts on it, you know, and not just with that one person, but with everybody, because I think these are some questions and some of the things that a lot of us have been wondering and thinking as well. And so I want to say, you know, thank you to that person. I asked if I could, you know, share their, you know, that they had, you know, sent me an email. They haven't responded yet, so I'm not going to put out who it was, just going to share the information and the questions that came through with you guys, and then we'll break it down one step at a time. Please hit the like button, guys. I already see we got like over 100 people in here already. Let's get over 100 likes right away. I'd appreciate that. That helps out the algorithm. That helps us get going, and it also gets other people in. And so I'd appreciate if we could do that. And thank you to the mods, members. And tonight I want to thank Jeremiah and Heather and Deb for helping me out with either pictures or information that I used to put together for this. So thank you guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Sirius, for putting in our Married to the Hobby channel. I appreciate that. And so without further ado, let's get into it. Let's break it down. All right, let me share my screen. We're going to look at quite a few things tonight. And I think I also want to kind of share why I have certain opinions and things of that nature. So what I did was I copied and pasted the info and the questions and the comments that this person had. Good to see everybody. Thank you so much for being here. All right, so let's get into it. So this is quite a bit. We're going to go in. I did a lot of mapping. I went through the process of seeing how many cameras are out there on this one specific route that was supposedly, now I don't know how true this is. It was reported to have been Annie, the one of the daughters of Nancy Guthrie, put out a potential path for people to be on the lookout, you know, as far as cameras and stuff go, and to her neighbors and things of that nature. And so we're going to look at that. I have no idea if it really does come from Annie or not, but we'll look at it, and we'll look at why do people think it's a plausible route, and you know, if it's not a plausible route. But without further ado, let's go into it. So the Nest Wi-Fi doorbell is a battery operated. This is internal memory. It has enough memory to store up to 1 hour of footage, give or take. This is in case you lose power to the home or the Wi-Fi. So if there was some sort of loss of Wi-Fi, according to the person that emailed me, who said that they had a background in IT, and they're going to say that in a little bit, that the doorbell could continue to record. Okay, that's interesting. And the point that they're going to be getting to is they're wondering if law enforcement have the doorbell camera, and it's an interesting thought process, and we're going to go through everything that they say here, and then I'll give you my thoughts. When the doorbell establishes a connection gain, it will upload the data to the cloud. Looking at the timeline given, this is how I read it. Oh, and that was the other thing. They had a question about the timeline being correct. It says here at 1:47 a.m., Wi-Fi is disconnected, camera loses connection. At 2:12 a.m., software detects a person on camera, no subscription. This is the time that the porch guy is at the front. This aligns with your guest's moonlight alignment time. Remember, Ellie did not have access to the video when the timeline was released. Okay, so let's say that this is true. Now, the video was released February 10th. When was the timeline dropped? Was that earlier? It may have been earlier. I thought it was around the same time. Maybe I'm wrong. I should have looked into that. But I've questioned whether or not, 1:47 a.m. is the right time when the Wi-Fi gets disconnected. And I'll explain it here a little bit further. But yes, we did have Steve from True Crime Web. Steve is a former CSI investigator, and he did a presentation based on the moon's positioning, and the height that we have for the suspect. We were able to determine that based on the angle and the length of the shadow that he created on the when the perpetrator's walking up, it aligned to a time past 2:00, about anywhere between 2 and maybe 2:15 in the morning, which doesn't make any sense when the timeline comes out and it states that the camera was disconnected at 1:47 a.m. Now, I'm going to hold off on my I guess I think I got a little bit more to add to it to make that case a little bit stronger, that law enforcement, although I don't think it's making a big difference, and I'll explain why in a little bit as well, but are misleading us with the timeline. And I think the 2:12 a.m., when the person, as the timeline states that there's a person on camera, I do think that there's a good possibility that is what we're seeing. And law enforcement might be misleading us. Now, why would they do that, right? Well, Brian Enton had reported that the house was immaculate, outside of the blood that was coming outside of the home, indicating that there wasn't a sign of a struggle, there wasn't a sign of assault. Maybe perhaps the perpetrator cleaned up after himself. If that's true, there may be little evidence that's left behind. Right. And if that's the case, like if there's not a lot of things that are disturbed, for instance, if you had a knocked over picture somewhere in the house, if somebody were to come forward and confess to that, you could ask them, hey, did you knock anything down? Did you destroy anything? Did anything get damaged or whatnot? And you're going to want to have a few things, right? Because somebody can get lucky and say, oh yeah, I knocked down a picture. Maybe some specifics like, all right, where was that picture? Was it on the wall? Was it on a dresser? Was it, hanging? Was it a large? Was it small? Those type of things, right? And so you could get some details out of it to confirm that the person that might be confessing to you is giving you accurate information. Now, if you don't have anything like that there, and you're concerned based on the high profileness of the case, and like how we've seen in other cases where there's has a high profile aspect to it, such as the JonBenet Ramsey case, where and a case also that went cold, which I'll be honest with you at this point, I'm not necessarily saying it's there yet, but given the fact that they've downsized the team that's investigating this case, plus, you have Kash Patel's comments of lack of confidence, tells me that it's probably not going to get solved anytime soon, outside of some sort of act of God miracle. Somebody confesses, somebody comes forward. I just don't think there's going to be a situation where at this point, maybe the DNA, hits, but it sounds like they don't have anything like a knife sheath that was brought in and left behind by the perpetrator, like in the Brian Koberger case. And so I think now they're looking at a bunch of unknown DNA throughout the house, trying to match and figure out who those belong to, and if they have a rhyme or reason as to why they should have had their DNA or could have had their DNA inside her house. Like I mentioned before, she was in an Uber at some point that night. God knows how much DNA she transferred from that Uber from all of the persons that were, passengers in that vehicle that night and other nights, etc. So I say that all basically to go back to the timeline here. I just think that if you lack some information there, you might have to hold something close to the vest. Now, one of the things, and I guess I can just get into it now. One of the things that he brings up or she brings up in this email is that there's something missing from the timeline. And that's the notification that there was movement before the disconnection. That didn't happen in a blink of an eye, right? There isn't there's a notification of like they did at 212. All right, there's a 212 detects a person on camera. Where is that detection before 147? So what law enforcement is doing at this point, in my opinion, this is my opinion, is they've released the video showing the perpetrator walk up and manipulate the doorbell camera. And they give us a timeline of 147. And so that automatically makes us think that, well, that must mean that, he got there and disconnected the camera at that time. He was fumbling with the plants and stuff. He must have disconnected at that moment. That is the moment where he arrived on scene. In fact, I was saying that, for a period of time until recently when I found out that the Nest camera gives off an indicator as to when somebody is actively watching. And then him without a backpack standing there, just standing there without the backpack and without the gun makes sense all of a sudden. Is he waiting there? Is that the first time he actually walks up there? And is he waiting there to see if somebody picks up the phone and actively watches the live feed? And there's not. And so does he then go get the gun, then go get the backpack, and then walk up there? If that's the case, then, this does make a little bit more sense if these times are flipped. That at 1:47 a.m., software detects a person on camera, and at 2:12 a.m. is when it disconnects. Now, does this change anything if law enforcement, because law enforcement didn't come out and say, all right, he was there for a period of time before disconnecting the phone or disconnecting the doorbell. All they have left it out as is at 1:47, it disconnects, and here's this footage. Now, where this becomes a problem is if law enforcement comes out and says, we believe that he was there for 20 minutes before disconnecting the camera. Because now your tips and your peoples that are looking into, that live in the neighborhood, that are looking at their cameras and stuff, now they're looking at the wrong time. As long as you don't do that or say that, and all you say is at 1:47 a.m. the Wi-Fi is disconnected, and you give off the illusion that that's the time that he showed up, walked up, and removed the doorbell camera, it's really no harm, no foul, because you're not getting people to look at the wrong time. Because whether or not the camera disconnected at 1:47 or at 2:12, and they have evidence to believe maybe it is this person being detected on camera, is at 1:47, people are still going to be looking up on their cameras, throughout the night up until that point. You get what I'm saying? And so it doesn't change what people are looking for. It just kind of keeps what they want close to the vest in case somebody comes forward. I hope that makes sense. And so, but yeah, I was, because I think that it's important when he walks up. Now, is the picture of him in the getup without the backpack and the gun a different night? I was talking with Mark the Shark, and he brought up an interesting point. He said, it took Google some time for them to get the image that they got, the video that they got. She didn't have a subscription or anything. So I think it would be even more difficult to pull up footage from January 11th. And I think he's absolutely right. I think that would be very difficult to do. on her system. And so if they have something that far in the past, I reckon it's probably from somebody else's system, somebody else's cameras that maybe perhaps do have a subscription, or maybe perhaps are some sort of wired in system that has a saving database somewhere. You get what I'm saying? I doubt it's going to be coming from Miss Guthrie's doorbell camera, right? So just kind of food for thought on those two things. I see a couple stars. James asks, what are my thoughts on the Mexican grave searches? You know, I think you have to search it. You got to, if a tip comes in, you got to look at it. They don't have right now. To me, it don't seem like law enforcement have much. As I mentioned before, Cash Patel is throwing Pima County under the bus, not really instilling confidence that the case is going to be solved anytime soon. You get some kind of tip, regardless of how maybe perhaps, if you think whether or not she may have gone into Mexico or not, you got to follow up. And I believe there's like some graves that they found out there. So I don't think anything's coming back as her or anything like that. But, you got to check it. You got to check it out. Even at this point, anything that seems unlikely, unless it's impossible, unlikely should still be investigated. That's kind of how I feel. All righty. So let's continue with this. I do not believe the Wi-Fi jammer theory. Antenna is too small. And why would you need it if you have access to her house to unplug the router? Okay. So, all right, let's continue real quick. The guy does all this shopping at Walmart and buys a $9.99 holster, the wrong type of firearm. I doubt he is spending tons of cash needed for a decent Wi-Fi jammer. Well, I mean, it depends. This guy also hasn't gotten caught, right? And even if he did purchase all of his items from Walmart, those things come with SKUs, and you can, Walmart can search who's purchased and et cetera. So unless this guy purchased these things, separately, across the nation somehow, if this guy is local and if this guy went to the Walmarts nearby, I think you might be able to find, it may take some time to find a pattern, but I think you can find it in, you got to get your warrants and stuff like that. But, you'll be able to limit or deduce people that are purchasing these items, cross-reference, see if anybody, has purchased them with, bought both of these items, whether together or separately, cross-reference cash purchases. And then those are going to have to go in one by one and see if you see anything suspicious. But you'll have something there to work with, right? Now, if this guy was somewhere far away, or maybe perhaps somebody had purchased this and he found it at a garage sale, and some guy had bought in the sweater and the backpack, and he just got lucky with the holster I don't know if the holster's from Walmart or not. I don't know if you can tell from the image or not exactly the type of holster it is, brand, etc. But I go back to function. If the perpetrator is left-handed, and I'll bring up the video again real quick. But if the perpetrator is left-handed, the reason, in my opinion, we might be seeing him, having the gun where he has it, might be because of function more so than anything else. So and for those that haven't seen this before, as the suspect approaches and steps up, he steps up with his left foot and approaches the left side of the door. One of the things that one of the persons I spoke to about this was my buddy Mike. He's also a mod. I'm not sure if he's in here now or not, but if he is, good to see you, my man. And what he mentioned is with southpaws, because he's a boxer, you got to be, leery about, weight distribution, etc. And most lefties, not all, you'll find some that are right-legged, etc., but most, are left-bodied. They lean to the left, they walk with their left foot, etc. And this guy does everything with his left. he first touches the gun with his left hand, which I don't know anybody that's in anything, whether they're gun trained or not, would instinctively, while they're looking at something, which I'm assuming is through the window to see if there's any movement, I don't think that they're going to be grabbing the gun with their non-dominant hand. It just doesn't make the most sense to me. And so then he comes up, and now we know that there's a light that is shining from the doorbell camera. That's one of the things that I've learned. So the little ring thing, I think, shines up, and you can kind of see the reflection on this guy's glove. So he's using his right hand to block, and he has his left hand lower. Now, if somebody shined a light at me, and if this is an experienced gun user, I mean, even naturally, I wasn't trained this way. It wasn't something that you went to the academy when I was a police officer. They're like, all right, let's shine lights. Which hand are you lifting and which hand are you keeping low? So that way, you keep it closest to your gun. You didn't have to do that. It's common sense. It's just also the way the body naturally gravitated towards, you would always want to, because you want to protect it. If it's even the fact that he's wearing a holster that doesn't fit the gun, a gun can easily fall out. So he's going to need to grab it quick. If he's like this and he has to switch his hands to grab it, it just doesn't make any sense. The motion, I don't feel like the body would make it make sense for that to happen. Right. And then he's manipulating the doorbell camera. Try to do that with your wrong hand. I mean, again, instinctively, he's going with that hand to manipulate the doorbell camera. Right. And then he's going to look down into his left. Doesn't see anything that he wants. And then finds these plants, and then he reaches down with his left hand and pulls them out. And so when it comes to the wrong type of holster, and when it comes to the positioning of the gun, I'm not saying that it's this for sure, but could it be because he doesn't want to give away that he's left-handed, and he has to pull the weapon in case of like somebody does wake up or somebody does approach or things go bad and he needs to pull the weapon. Now he has to pull it from an uncomfortable position, possibly from his it's a right-handed pistol. So, possibly from his non-dominant hand. Wouldn't it make sense to have a holster that the gun would kind of just fall out of if you needed it to? And all you had to do was just twist your hand like that and pull it out, and you're right here. And that's me being right-handed if I had a left-handed holster, right? So I think that there's possibly a reason why he wore those, or why he wore that holster. Now, a lot of people allude to this guy being stupid or idiotic or dumb because he's wearing the wrong holster and he has it in the wrong position. I mean, you can look at it that way, but somebody that inexperienced and somebody that bad, for one, I don't think they're that comfortable on camera like that approaching, to burglarize or in this case, abduct somebody. They seem very calm for that. I just doubt that doesn't mean that this person hasn't done other illegal things like carried around or possessed a weapon before. Well, anyways, you can't be stupid and then also, get away with it for this amount of time and for the foreseeable future at this point. Now, I could be wrong, and I hope I am wrong, that law enforcement make an arrest or something happens in the very near future, but Cash Patel throwing Pima County under the bus just didn't sound like they're that confident, just me being honest. Even if what he's saying is true, that Pima County was incompetent out there in their investigation and led by an incompetent leader. Let's just say to the maximum degree that is true. If the FBI had any inclination that they were about to solve this or on the right path of solving this, I don't think that's the message that they're sending, basically using Pima County as an scapegoat. scapegoat. I think that they would be more like, hey, regardless of what happened, we took, we're confident in the investigation, we're confident in the agents that we have, and we think there's going to be a resolution pretty soon. That's a confident answer. That's an answer that, whether it's true or not, that you're not throwing somebody under the bus. Because if you do, well, then it just looks like you ain't going to solve this anytime soon. Because what was he doing? He was like, look at what we did. We did this, we did that. We're the ones that got Google to give us the video. We put it out there. All right, cool. That was what, 100 and some days ago. What have you done since? What have you done to find her since? Right? So you're living on the past success that you had in the first few hours that you were involved in the case. All right, that's fine. Where are you now? Seems like you were on a promising road right away. So where are you now? Right? It's not like the FBI is the first, agency that's called on scene on some of these cases. Majority of the cases, they're days behind. They need to be asked for help, and then, it has to get assigned. Somebody's got to get out there, etc. So it's not like this is uncommon compared to other investigations that they've had and had success. So I don't see, Pima County being as an excuse for the FBI also failing at this point. But again, I don't think two things, equal out, that this guy's that stupid and he's an idiot and then also has gotten away with it up to this point. Now, maybe perhaps Savannah Guthrie hasn't paid $500,000 for a private investigation team. That may be accurate. But do you think that there is some private investigators that are investigating this, whether on her behalf, officially or not? Probably. And so this person has stumped them to this point as well. And so to me, then I start to look at his movements from a different light. Okay, what's the reason behind it? Why is he doing it? He's not stupid. He's gone away with it for this long. He's not stupid. There's got to be a reason. And that's when I realized that he wasn't doing everything with his left hand. I was like, it's interesting. Now, I mean, if it comes out that they find the guy and he ends up being a right-handed individual, I'd be surprised. I'd be pretty shocked. But I'd have to see the evidence and follow it, and the evidence leads in that direction. I'd have questions. Like, do you normally lead with your left hand on everything? Was it on purpose? And if so, why didn't you just go and get like a left-handed holster and really make people think you're left-handed? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. So this person goes on to say, I do not believe in the Wi-Fi jammer theory. The antenna is too small, and why would you need it if you had access to her house to unplug her router? Well, they didn't have access initially. And when you look at the video, you can see the ground right here. There's no blood or anything. And so this definitely was before Nancy was removed from the house, the perpetrator walking up. And you have to get in the house to pull the router. So the problem comes with that. And then you have this issue. This is from WFLA, and this was back in March 6, 2026, by Brian Enton. And so Brian Enton was boots on the ground. He goes on to say, this article says, the FBI is looking into a possible internet outage during the time that Nancy Guthrie went missing in Arizona after her neighbors reported suspicious stoppage in service. Not one neighbor, but neighbors, multiple neighbors, plural. One neighbor told News Nation his Ring camera history mysteriously not available from the night that Guthrie disappeared. Other neighbors confirmed to News Nation that the FBI had asked them about a similar internet service disruption in the Tucson neighborhood on February 1st. So multiple houses in the area were affected, but not every house was affected. And because some of these people indicated that they were asked by the FBI, not that their service was disrupted, meaning that theirs didn't, but others did. And to the point where FBI had to investigate it. So I go back to Luke Daly. I go back to Carlos and their vehicles and what it looked like, and how they don't look alike, and how Carlos's van has an insignia on the side of it, and yet they had warrants for both of those vehicles. I just kind of, wonder if they have a suspect video on camera, you know? And if they do, at this point, it doesn't seem like there's a resolution anytime soon. Why not put out the information there? I mean, if you did have a suspect vehicle, you put out the information, hey, we're looking for this vehicle, not only because of what may have occurred that night, but I strongly suspect whoever committed this crime was in and out of that neighborhood multiple times. Maybe somebody will remember seeing a car. Hey, you know what? I thought it was my neighbor's car, but now that you mention it, there was this. I mean, remember Enan Harsh from the Idaho case? He when was asked, and it was funny because he did this on I think it was on Truth and Transparency on her channel. There was a time where he was the guest, and they were showing him the police cam footage of the vehicle of police, not police, I think it was Gray Hughes or somebody that did a drive-through behind the victim's residence. And Enan Harsh told him, hey, I remember seeing an Elantra park back there quite a bit. And I thought it was my ex-girlfriend's because she had one that was very similar. And I thought it was her, just stalking me, but it was parked back there multiple times right before the murders happened. The guy was out there, and we found out later that he was within 100 feet 23 times, leading up to the murders. And so I would suspect that this person here probably did some similar surveillancing. And so if you put out a vehicle information, let's just say, even if it's a average car like a white Elantra, that might spark somebody's memory, even if they thought it was something different, even if it was some situation where somebody thought it was a friend of theirs. Like, hey, you know what? I thought it was my buddy just always passing by, but there was a car that does match that description a few times on these days. And then maybe perhaps you can find something. But the longer you wait to put things out like that, the more this information and evidence is going to be lost if it's there to be gathered. Time is of the essence. And like in the Brian Koberger case, they got a lot of that surveillance and stuff within a few days. I don't know how. I'm hoping that they got that here, but you hear about this problem with the neighborhood having internet issues. And then I don't know. I mean, could it have been? I have no idea. I think it's possible. I'd found a jammer that had the antenna to the side. That was one of the issues with the porch guy with the supposed walkie-talkie in his front pocket there, that the antenna was sticking straight up, right? And it would be out of the top part of the, let me pull it up real quick so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. I hope I still have it. I do. So first and foremost, this image here definitely makes this look like a lot wider of an item than an antenna. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I kind of think it's like a leather pouch, to be honest with you. But this is the video, and I've blown it up, and so we can see it pretty good. And I don't know. I mean, look at where the pocket ends. Look at how big that zipper is, or the zipper tag. I'm assuming that's what that is. That's probably from the opening right here, or the very tip of the opening to that zipper tag. It looks about the same length of that zipper tag. So that's like two of them, right? That's a very small walkie-talkie with a very big, wide antenna on the top, if that's the case. You know what I mean? Open Minded says, some people believe that the gun was faked at a stage prop. So why did the FBI do all those gun stores if they were looking for a particular weapon? It's a great point. That's a great point. And that's one of the things that was said here in this email was if the gun was real. Let's see. He took the camera to use it at his first demand to the family, but he got mad because the family might not have put a statement out, and that's why he contacted the media. Interesting. But is it possible that this could be some sort of jammer? Maybe. And if it is, why is he on camera? Right, that's the next question. Why is he on camera if he has a jammer with him? And it's not like, if we were to look at the video again, of him walking up, he's not walking up to it as if he thinks he has a jammer on. I mean, he ducks his head, he turns on the light, he flashes the light towards the camera as he's manipulating it with the plants. He's blocking it with his hand. He's not acting as if he has the jammer with him. Like let's just say he thought he turned it on, right? He's not acting that way, in my opinion. Information requests uploaded to Discord. What'd you get? Oh, thank you for that. Thank you, Deb. Appreciate that. So to me, I think he wants to be on camera. And then again, like, what is this that he's doing with this? Right now, if he is knowledgeable to the point where he knows that blinking light, as long as it doesn't blink, that nobody's watching him, right? If he's aware of that on this device, don't you think he's aware that all you need is a little pick thing to pop it in on the top to get the camera to come off? You know what I'm saying? And then plus, you can't separate the camera from the mount with a string or anything like that. What he's getting behind is the mount itself on the wall. I mean, I don't think he really thought that he was going to try to be able to dislodge that whole thing. I think he's trying to get him stuck there. Now, there's a reef on the other side of that door that if he was just trying to conceal the camera, like put something on top of it so that it would conceal it so you couldn't see through it, why not use that big old sun reef looking thing? It would have done a lot better of a job. It would have hung on the thing and it would have blocked it better. And if his goal was to take off the camera and or destroy it, there was a lot of rocks around where those plants were that he grabbed. And we know that he hit some floodlights with something, whether it was a rock or a blunt force object. He destroyed some floodlights. So he was capable and willing to damage either lights or cameras. Why not this one? Why go to the trouble of doing all this stuff? So to me, I think he's sending a message more than anything else. I think that's what the flowers are. I think that's why he wants to be on camera. I think there's something here. I haven't figured it out yet. But there are so many things. And again, I've said it before, just because there's a smarter way of doing something doesn't mean that somebody not so intelligent wouldn't do something that was stupid. But is this guy really stupid? I mean, he's gotten away with it up to this point. And so we have to factor in those things. Plus, then you go back to, the ransom notes being sent out to local media and then to TMZ. So why did they do that? I mean, if your goal was to get in touch with Savannah and have her know that something happened, you reached out to the local media. Just because they didn't air it out, doesn't mean that they didn't give law enforcement that information. In fact, you can almost guarantee it. Yet they went a step further after local media did not air out anything about the ransom letters, emails, notes, whatever they were. Then he goes to TMZ. Now, TMZ don't air it out either, but they talk about it, which is something different than what the other two news media's outlets did. All right. Now, there's only been, I think, one kidnapping where somebody reached out to the media, and that's the Lindenberg kidnapping back in a long time ago. There's been some narcissists who have contacted either newspapers or news articles or even podcasts. I think Howard Stern had supposedly somebody call in that people thought were kind of weird. I know there was one on a different YouTube channel that people thought was Brian Koberger. That was from what I understand and from the information I gathered, that was fake, perpetrated from the person that from that show. They had made a deal with somebody to call in and say some weird stuff. Well, anyways, outside of those, outside of that, like the people that have contacted the media were like the Zodiac, BTK, these fantasy driven crimes, these people that were getting off on also stumping people, things of that nature. And this guy contacted the media. And then I found it weird that when TMZ doesn't put out the information, right? They don't put it out. Then they stop talking. They don't respond anymore. And I know some people are going to say, well, Daniel, it's because they wanted proof of life. Yeah, well, I mean, right now there's a pretty big reward out there for information. If you're truly in it for the financial reasons, then you can say something like, hey, we'll tell you where she's at so you can, have your closure. Give us X amount of money. Doesn't mean you're going to fulfill it. Right now, they're probably going to ask you for some evidence, and you probably can give up something like, remember how I mentioned, did anything fall? Did anything break? What time did they get there, etc. And so, you could still get paid. You did the legwork. You studied, you surveilled, you went in and got and removed her from the home. Even if she would have survived the first couple of days, and even if Savannah Guthrie paid, how many of y'all really think they would have just released Nancy? I don't think that was ever in the cards. So the circumstances still don't really change. You know what I'm saying? And so, just food for thought. But let's get back to this email. I know I'm gonna end up being here a minute. Let's get the likes up too, guys. I think we're over. I got 500 people in here, 531 people. We have 204 likes. Come on, guys, let's get those likes up, please. It helps out the algorithm. It helps me out. It helps out the channel. Really appreciate it. And it doesn't cost anything, so I would really appreciate it. If this theory is correct, and so what is his theory? That he disconnects the camera and then reconnects it. I don't understand why he would do that. For one. Two, he mentions that maybe perhaps he would needed to unplug the router. So I think he's indicating that this person would have made entry. And then what is he doing? He's doing this before he removes Nancy because there is no blood on the ground. And so I'm not sure if this theory holds up, but if this theory is correct, then the perp has already gained access to her home and could have been in the house for hours. I mean, he could have, but he's not removing Nancy until after what we see on camera because there's no blood on the ground. If they unplugged her Wi-Fi router, who plugged it back in? The doorbell has to be still in the premises when done. Would this be this? And this would be beyond weird. I mean, I don't know if we have evidence that the Wi-Fi router was ever unplugged, for one, but maybe. And I don't understand what the purpose would be to plug it back in. Now, I think where they're trying to go to in this is that maybe perhaps the family might be involved and maybe they plugged in the router in the morning when they went over there. But even at that makes no sense. I mean, how does that benefit them in one way or another? In fact, if they were aware of the kidnapping and they were aware that something like this happened, they may want to keep it unplugged to maintain that appearance. So I'm not sure where they're going with this or how it plays. Let's see. Images from other cams show before and after the event. Everything of the night event is missing. Exactly. So that's one of the things that I pointed out too, is that law enforcement had indicated that they see what's happening before and after, but in the middle, stuff is missing, and that's from the camera that supposedly picked up somebody at 2:12 a.m., which there is a camera outside in the backyard. So it may have been that camera that was left by the perpetrator, which in my opinion is evidence that the perp wasn't that familiar with the house. One, that camera isn't well seen from, like, for instance, the street. And two, if the perpetrator was aware of the cameras, or was like intimate with the place, and he was getting rid of and breaking things, he would have known about the camera in the backyard, especially given the fact that the back doors were propped open, right? The only thing I can think of as a reason the back doors are being propped open is because that was the entry point, right? Entry and exit point is usually the same place. The fact that there's blood going outside of the front is an indication also that something happened in the home that made the perpetrator change his mind and go out the front door. Now, could have been the injury, maybe, but it sounds like the injury occurred at the door itself, which means the decision to change their mind had already occurred prior to the injury. So what could it have been? In my opinion, it is the person they probably, what's the word I'm looking for? They underestimated Nancy's mobility, which is another reason why I believe that this is somebody from outside of the family, not that close. They underestimated her mobility, had to change the plan from going out the back to the front. They also left a camera that was in the backyard without destroying it or doing anything to it. And again, that camera is not very visible if you're trying to surveil from the front of the house. So those are two indications to me that the perpetrator most likely is somebody that is not that familiar with the home that way. Maybe they've been there, maybe they've been to the front yard, maybe they've been there at a couple of times but just never noticed it. But somebody like family members, etc., or somebody that lived there at some point, like a tenant that lived maybe perhaps in that guest house, I would expect them to know. You get what I'm saying? Goes on to say, I do agree with you on this. Everything the perp does lead me to believe he's left-handed. First thing I notice, he taps his firearm with his left, but his holster, that's the only sold for right hand. Him grabbing flowers to the left and so on. Tommaso plays a right hand bass. The guy out of Cali looks ambidextrous. The guy out of Cali, I think he changed his plea and is pleading guilty to everything. And so I know some folks were trying to say that maybe perhaps he had some sort of, I don't know, that maybe he was in fact involved. I think they would have found out by now. You know, they have all his information and stuff. They would have been able to figure out if he was somewhat involved or not. And I think that if he was, I think he'd be singing. It doesn't seem like the guy that's going to be like, I'm going to keep everything to myself. I'm going to go down alone. And I'm not going to say anything. I think that if he had any valuable information, law enforcement would have gotten it out of him. I think he would have asked for probably he probably would have gotten a deal, especially if he wasn't the person that actually committed the crime. So the fact that he got a plea, that he's changing his pleas, probably got some sort of agreement on the table for that. And since there's no arrest or anything that have led up from anything, I wouldn't think that arrangement is on behalf of something that he said that referenced the case in some way or benefited the case into the investigation. So I think that him changing his plea is also an evidence that he wasn't in cahoots with the family members on this. All right, so let's see. Let's go on. All right, here's the other one. So this is the first email that they had sent me, and they ended it with this. And here is my question to you. Have you ever wondered about the state of the lock of the front door the morning law enforcement arrived? Would you find it strange if it was locked? And so this definitely is trying to lead me in the direction that maybe perhaps the family members were involved. Now, I've heard this before. I've heard people say this in the comment section. And if you think the family's involved, let me say this too clear. I don't know for a fact whether or not. I don't think so. Seems like I think that they would have gotten busted by now and arrested if that was the case, but that's just my opinion. I don't know everything, so I'm not closing the idea or the thought or the process that it could have been. somebody very, very close to her. I don't know. I don't have all the information or the evidence to say one way or the other. I find it unlikely, but we'll answer this. So I've gone out and looked everywhere I can, and I have not found anything from any media sources, anything from anybody that have indicated that this was true, that the door was locked. Now, here's the other thing. So let's just say that Nancy was missing and somebody called law enforcement, and law enforcement arrived before anybody else, and they found the front door locked. I think that would probably lead to somebody that has a key, right? However, I don't think that was the case. So when let's just say that law enforcement did arrive and the door was locked. Did somebody arrive before them? Now, in their search, maybe they weren't aware. Did they close and lock the door at some point before law enforcement arrived? Did they leave? Did they show up, lock the door, leave out of habit to go and search the area or go to the hospitals or whatever the case may be, and then come back and law enforcement get there and it's locked? I think when law enforcement and who was there already plays a huge role, if this is even true. Now, if you guys have seen this somewhere, if you guys have seen that, please send it to me where it was officially said from, because I've not. I've done my media searches, I've done my news searches, I've searched source interviews, etc., like crazy. I even went to as far as asking Chat GPT. I was like, yo, where's this from? Like, is there anything that ever reported this? And I could not find a single thing. And so to me, I mean, it just kind of boils down to, all right, well, it depends, right? Because like if I show up and the front door is unlocked, now if I see blood and stuff, I'm also ex law enforcement, so that makes a bigger difference. But I'm thinking probably, I don't know if I'm thinking that somebody went in there and abducted somebody, but I'm very much concerned that something criminal could have happened. Right now, mom's 84 years old. Who could want to possibly go in there and harm her? Right. So maybe perhaps the denial aspect kicks in, and I've not been in that situation to say that's not how I would act. But hey, I don't know. But I have not seen anything that says that. Now, if there is something there, please send it to me, put it in the live chat. It was in this article. It was from this person that said it. It was this or that. I would love to see it. And that would, depending on how it was discovered, right? If law enforcement was the first ones on scene, if they got there before anybody else could lock the door, then it's interesting. It is. You have to take that into consideration. If family was already there, if somebody else had already arrived that may have had a key or means to lock it, then I think you need to hold off on the judgment part of it and ask yourself, when did it happen? Now I have not seen it. I've not been able to find it anywhere about it at all. And I think some people might be saying, well, there was no forced entry. There wasn't really any forced entry with the Brian Koberger case. He just left the door open, propped open. Sirius comes in with 5 Drunk Turkey Show memberships. Thank you, Sirius. You're such an amazing person. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Could the holster location to be hiding no peen? You think this might be a female? Person does have some small feet. I will say that when they're walking up to you can see their footprint is much smaller than the tiles. I'm gonna try to get it right. I think that's a good one right here. You kind of see like right here where the foot is much smaller. I just think this is a little dude though. I think it's a littler guy, probably about, if I had to take a guess, 5'8", 5'9". You know, based on what we saw with the height description here, which only puts this guy walking out here about 2:12 a.m., which is crazy based on the timeline. But all right, let's continue. So I don't know. Let me scroll down a little bit. I'm a little bit behind on chat. So let me scroll down some real quick, see if I see anything that pops up. Thank you so much. I'm gonna look that up. Why wear sunglasses inside? Drunk. I'm the drunk turkey for one, and two, it's my get up for one. It's two reasons. So when I created the show, I had this idea, right, where it was going to be that feel like old school disc jockey. Now, I wasn't going to talk about true crime. I was going to talk about like UFOs, aliens, conspiracies, and things of that nature. And it was me and my buddies. And the idea I had of the show was like that old school, like 70s disc jockey. You know, he's sitting inside the radio station, talking on the radio right here, right in the mic, smoking a cigarette, wearing the aviators. That's kind of my vision that I had for the show. And then also, I have keratoconus, which is a eye disorder in my right eye. I'm eventually going to go blind in my right eye, but lights bother me. And so I have these bright lights right here that face me. And so I wear this for comfort as well. But thank you. Yeah, I most of my viewers and stuff have come from the Brian Koberger case. I've interviewed so many people in that case, including the parents of Kaylee Gonzalez. I have interviewed Howard Bloom, who wrote a book and several articles about Brian Koberger case, Anjanette Levy, Jen Coffindaffer. I'm probably missing so many. You know, a lot of those primetime series and stuff, I interviewed a lot of people that were talking about that case. I actually came out in a few of them, not good on a lot of them, to be honest with you. They did some hit pieces on me, but it's okay. But yeah, no, Drunk Turkey was from, we're going to talk about other stuff, and we just got into true crime, a lockpick. It's possible. Let's see. Spray paint by scraping a tiny sample of paint off of the camera lens. Scientists can run it through a spectrometer to identify the exact brand, color line, and patch number. Interesting. Damn, maybe he was trying to prevent any DNA transfer by not using any of his own tools, even if he was wearing gloves. He could have. Keys, maybe that's what key had to get in. I don't know. How can this happen in the 21st century? Well, you know, I mean, if you go look up, and I hate to say this, but if you look up burglary tools on Amazon, they give you Wi-Fi jammers, things to break into glass. I mean, you can get a whole kit on how to do things, and it's insane with the stuff that they sell. And what's this email from? This is an email that was sent to me that I thought made some great points, and so I wanted to share my thoughts on them. Let's see. Please hit the like button, guys. Let's get that going. Question for DT. Do you think that this could be a set of pliers or wire cutters that fell open, and we're seeing one of the grips? Have you seen the Walmart tool selection? Are we talking about what's in the in his jacket? It could be. Why didn't Tommaso pick up Nancy for dinner? Because he was busy. Because he was propping the door open. Well, you know, I don't know why he didn't pick her up, but she had her phone with her, and she had a pacemaker, and that was connected to her phone. So there's a couple of things that law enforcement are going to be able to see because they have her phone. The perpetrator didn't take off with it, thank God. And so what they're going to be able to tell and determine is her movements, where she moved with an extreme amount of certainty due to the fact that they're going to have the GPS chip. Now, in that area, the perpetrator may mask himself because if they're looking at triangulation or if they're looking for advanced timing records, that area's electronic footprint or that mobile footprint there to try to determine how accurate, like the triangulation aspect of it, isn't there. Service is really poor. That's one of the things I asked Mark the Shark when he was out there. I was like, yo, how's service out there? And he said it sucks. And so with phone service as bad as it is, it's going to be hard to determine where people are. But if you have their device, that changes the game because you have a GPS chip and you can also, down to a couple of feet, determine where they are. And then you also have her heart rate monitor or her pacemaker. So if that phone is connected to her pacemaker and it's showing that it's working properly, then you can determine that that phone was with Nancy. So it's not just somebody walking around with Nancy's phone, right? And so that has her there all the way to the point of 2:28 in the morning. Now, I question the stuff between 1:47 and 2:28, what happened in between there. But I do not think that law enforcement would mislead us to believe that the person wasn't there, or would mislead us outside of that, because they have to they have tips that are coming in based on the timeline that they give out. So the entry and the arrival and the departure time is probably going to be as accurate as possible. The stuff in between, based on what they may or may not have, is the questionable stuff, right? Did they move some things around just in case somebody did come forward? And so, where's the Discord link? Yeah, the Discord link, I put it in the it is in the channels playlist and not in the playlist, I'm sorry, in the community post. Look for the members, it'll come out. I'm going to drop it again as soon as this show is over. Let's see. Just want to catch up real quick. I don't see any stars. Nothing yet. I'm sure you guys have some questions. All right. I'm down to the bottom. All right. So let's go forward. So as far as I know, there's only one generation battery version of the Nest doorbell released in 2021, which according to this article from Yahoo News, and this happens with the doorbell app, Ms. Guthrie asked about security cameras on November 5th, 2021, not for safety concerns, but for wildlife, to view wildlife. Thinking about buying a Ring or Nest security doorbell camera. Any suggestions? Which has the best camera? Interested in seeing animal activity at night. Security cameras have proven to be central in the case. Camera footage from Google Nest system released by authorities on February 10th show a man tampering with her security camera. So that tells us when it was May 10th. I wonder when the timeline was dropped. So she bought one a while ago. So it's one of the first ones. And I showed a video, the last one we were talking about, the doorbell camera. Those first ones, if you remove it from the plate, it automatically disconnects. That is how it disconnects from it has to have that magnetic plate backing. So as soon as the doorbell camera was removed, it would stop recording. And the other thing we found out is the fact that the doorbell camera blinks if somebody's actively watching. And if not, it stays green, solid green, meaning it's recording, but nobody's actively watching, which could be why this guy was comfortable being there so much. I mentioned that a couple of times, so I just wanted to say that again. But let's go back to the email that I got. How the camera receives an on-off trigger is by a magnet on the mounting plate, and it triggers a switch that says, hey, I'm mounted, or plugged in by a USB cable. And here's my question to you. If the above theory is correct, then who powered the Wi-Fi camera? This would be beyond weird. Do you think LE or FBI have the doorbell camera? Now, this one, I don't know, right? About the doorbell camera. What do you guys think? Do you think that LA found it? I don't. Okay, so Open Mind says February 6th was the timeline. Interesting. Now, law enforcement released the video, or FBI released it, I wonder if they had it for a few days first. I don't know when FBI got it and they got into it, etc. I know they released it, but I wonder if they had it for a few days first. Now, do y'all think that law enforcement have the doorbell camera? I don't know if I can answer that. Part of me wants to say maybe he took it off and just chunked it somewhere and it was found. We wouldn't know that, especially if it was found very early on in the investigation, before anybody got out there, before any of the streamers got out there. We wouldn't know that. You know what I mean? If law enforcement found it. So I think it's possible that they have it. If they do, given how much manipulation that the guy was doing with it and how much he was handling it, I strongly suspect, given he had a mouth light, there would be some sort of DNA left behind on it. Maybe that I would think he would take it with him because of that, possibly. And it also could be like a little bit of a trophy if you think about it. And if it is a trophy, if he did take it and it's a trophy because he spent significant amount of time with it and it reminds him of it, of what he did that night, that also goes back into the fantasy aspect of this case, where I think that this guy might have been that. Now, fantasy doesn't necessarily mean sexually motivated, which it could have been. It could also be revenge fantasy, etc. And sexually motivated doesn't mean that he has a sexual attraction towards Nancy. It could be like an attraction towards Savannah that he's portraying on Nancy, and or could be just a power thing, that this is somebody who is the mother of somebody very wealthy, etc. And that might be, the fact that they're able to get away with doing something like this might affect them in a certain manner. So there's a lot of things here that, in my opinion, that kind of lead that way as a sexually motivated crime or a financially motivated crime. All right, let's see. Now, if they don't have it, if they do have the camera, I would think it would be easier for them to pull the images and the video that they have, especially if it being video, right? Now, I don't know. It seems like they said that they had to go to Google for it. So I don't think you need the camera for that, but maybe. I don't know. It is. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that the doorbell camera, do you guys think that the doorbell camera was an effect? Not an effect. Do you think the doorbell camera was found? Deb says, timeline states 147 Guthrie's doorbell camera was disconnected from the network, not that the Wi-Fi. That's true. That is true. But they also don't say at 146 or 145 there's a detection like they do at 212. See, at 212 they say software detects a person on camera. I would assume that there was a time where the software detected the person on camera. Why aren't they giving us that first time around? You know what I'm saying? That's the part that bothers me. Nest doorbell cameras do not have a micro SD card slot per user access SIM cards for local video storage. Instead, they rely on cloud. So there you go. So maybe even if they did find it, they would still need the cloud. But I wonder if he took it or not. That's still up for debate, right? Because we don't know if they got it or not. So I don't know. I have no idea. All right, let's see. How many cameras receive on and off triggers by a mag? Okay, we already read that part. This person goes on to say, my main background is computer IT. Thanks to my dad, I also have an alarm system video surveillance background, more on the commercial side. Always found that the beginning of the timeline interesting because to me, it's backwards. In this case, you should have an event notification that someone is at the front door first, then followed by the disconnection. I've always believed that the perp was at the front door at 2:12 a.m. And your moon guest reinforced that for me. Ellie just never had that video yet to confirm. 1:47 a.m. can be up for debate as to how he disconnected. But to me, the easiest way to gain access to the house and unplug the router. That takes care of Wi-Fi cameras. If he already secured Nancy in the house, this could lead to more calm perp at the front door. It could, but I think the fact that he knew that nobody was watching him, if he knew that the green dot not blinking, and again, we gotta ask ourselves, like, who would know that, right? Somebody that owns one of them, right? Now, I showed a video. Let me pull it up real quick. I know I still have it. I just gotta find it real fast. Let me pull it up. Here it is.
And he did this little video. It's very clear. Watch this. Watch.
Okay, Megan, I've installed the Nest doorbell camera on our door to the garage here. And what's interesting is it comes.
So this guy, and you can see the camera, he has a tripod behind him. And he's recording. And what he did was, what you can see,
tab.
How it is to remove it. Now, this light's not blinking. It's not blinking, right?
Tab, almost like
when you watch it. It's staying still. This is what that guy would have been seeing. Now, somebody might be saying, hey, we're watching the video from the other side. Shouldn't it be blinking? He's not watching a live feed. Obviously, he's right there. So he doesn't have his phone out watching the live feed. So if he pulled out his phone and started watching the live feed, and that should blink, but it doesn't. And so what they did was, it's recording. They pulled it and then they edited it back. And this is, they put them together and spliced them together.
Tip of a screwdriver, really. And that's how you remove it from the top. So you just push down and it clicks.
And you can also hear sound. We're not hearing sound on that audio. On that video. Now, maybe perhaps it's because Google couldn't retrieve the sound, but I wonder why.
Right off, sort of. There it goes. So it pulls right off that way, and that's how you take it off to charge it, because it is battery powered. It needs to be charged every so often. There's no wires.
Now, the crazy thing about this one, and this one's a brand new one, because in this video, he goes on to say, hey, you purchased one we just bought one for this experiment, etc. Nancy had one since 2001. That was one that I had pulled up.
Yo, what up? If you've got the Google Nest doorbell battery version here, taking out the box, and you want to see it work.
So this is from 2001. When she got hers.
Or wherever you decide to put it. You've got it out, you're there like, I've charged this. Why isn't it turning on? Well, it's because you haven't used the metal bracket that comes with the device. So the metal bracket that you've got here slides into the...
And it's hard to see here, but there's actually, you can kind of see it right there where the mouse is. There's a lip right here. That lip is to prevent somebody from grabbing a string or something and sliding it from the back to get it off.
Button along the top.
So when that guy is doing that, for one, if he's aware of this green dot blinking thing, right? And if somebody's watching it active, that it's going to blink. If he's aware of that, then, he's going to be comfortable taking it off. I would also assume that he would know that all you need is a little thingamajig to push into the top to remove it. I think he would need the whole wire thing. Now, maybe perhaps he wasn't aware if it was wired or battery. Now, if he didn't know if it was wired or battery, that also leads me to believe that this person is not that intimate with the house. You know what I'm saying?
Up. If I can just slide that in, there we go. And then the bottom clicks in like so. And you can see now it's getting electricity from the 6,000 milliamp hour battery within this thing. And if I take the ejector tool, plug it in at the top, so the tool comes away, and you've seen that I've lost electricity to the device. Yo, what up? If you've got the
So this is the Google Nest doorbell camera for that. And again, if you were to ask, can a person question is, can a person tell from looking at the battery Nest doorbell camera if you are actively watching? And the answer from Google Nest, Google's yes. A person at your door can tell if you're watching or actively using the camera. The device has a built-in LED that changes colors and behavior depending on how it's being constructed. Solid green light, the camera is actively turned on and is on standby mode. Blinking green, someone is actively viewing the live feed from the camera. So this is why the guy's so calm at the front. He knows if someone's watching or not. It's probably why, like I said, he went out there, not with the backpack, not with the gun, and probably stood there and wanted to see if somebody would answer. Probably ready to take off if need be. Right? And, because if somebody picked up, boom, he's got to get out of there. He's not going to be able to run really quick with a big old backpack and a gun on his crotch. Right? So I think that's may have been what may have been going on here. Pretty scary stuff, though, that, all somebody has to do is see that. It's crazy. And they know whether or not you're watching or not. So who would know that? Like a tech person? That's one of the things I think this is. I think this is a tech person. Somebody who owns one. Or somebody who maybe perhaps, I don't know, sells security cameras, security systems. They would know this. If I went to a house and somebody's like, well, why don't I just get a Ring or a Nest camera? And I was the salesperson, I'd be like, I would know, hey, it's real easy if somebody comes to your house with your Nest camera and they can tell if you're actively watching or not. And that could be dangerous because if they know that you're not watching, that could mean 1, you're asleep, or 2, you're not there, or whatever the case may be. And they might feel confident into breaking into your home. So I don't know. Wouldn't there be notices on her phone? There would be. But he's able to determine whether or not she's getting them and viewing it by the blinking light on the doorbell camera. So, pretty crazy stuff. Let's continue back with the with this. And so let me go back down. All right. The reason I ask about whether you think LE has the cam is for this reason. The Nest battery doorbell has some internal memory to record video. So if Wi-Fi goes down, it'll upload the event at the time when Wi-Fi is restored. So if you miss things, if the disconnection happens first, and then he takes the camera, and then it cannot dump that video to the Google servers unless he plugs the router back in and connects the bracket with the magnet to turn the camera back on. This would be weird for a criminal to do. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, this would be weird for anybody to do, even if you were going in there and trying to, I don't know, if you were Tommaso or something. I don't see what the point of doing all this would be. If the doorbell truly disconnected at 147 and at 212, he is at the front. See, if the doorbell did connect at truly at 147, then the 212 is probably the camera outside in the backyard, right? I don't think that they're the same camera, if that's the case. Now, oh yeah, look at this. Dog brings up an excellent point. I think techs use bite lights. I mean, especially if you're in attics or things of that nature, running wires and stuff like that, you need to see and you need both your hands. That's true. That is true. But I'm not blaming anybody. I don't want anybody to go start rounding up everybody that works for like ADT in the area. I don't, looking for left-handed people. I don't think we should be doing that yet. So don't do that. I do remember early reports that there was smashed camera in the home, but never gave the description. It was a smashed floodlight that was damaged on the side of the house. How did his car not appear on camera? If you park the car out of view, the camera, once they're disabled, then the camera is in play. I get a feeling they know something about how quickly they dismissed the Kia Soul. I'm glad I got this. So let's bring up the maps. Let's see what's going on. So the Kia Soul, we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at some maps. I'm torn if that picture is from the same night. It's the shoes. He seems to be doing things on a budget. Cheap revolver holster for a striker fire pistol is daring and funny. If the pistol was real, I wouldn't be surprised if that pistol turns out to be cheap. High Point C9 just seems like his style. You know what they say, the only good holster for a high Point C is a garbage can. But hey, look at me, I have a gun. Well, they did go to gun stores looking for people, so I think that they have an idea that they think that may have identified the type of gun that he has in his pocket. I mean, in his holster. So that's one thing. Two, again, I think that some of the stuff that he's doing might be out of necessity and out of function. Like if he found, I don't know, if he went to like a flea market and somebody was just selling a bunch of these Walmart things they got on clearance somewhere, right? They got all this Walmart stuff, backpacks, jackets, the whole 9 yards. It's on clearance, and they're selling it for, you know, let's just say they go for $40. They found that on clearance for 15, and now they're selling it for 25. You know, a lot of people do that. And he just found this place where he could buy cash, no cameras, flea market, something like that. And he just got the whole thing at one shebang. Yeah, I think it's possible. And as far as the Kia Soul, well, let's look up some maps, why that was discredited right away, because I think it's important, right? Let's look at it. Let's look at the map. Alrighty. And I did the painstaking thing for hours doing this earlier today. So let me show you what I was doing. Excited about this. And I want to thank Heather and I want to thank Jeremiah for helping me out and get this stuff worked together. All right, here it is. So, couple things. So, I don't know if this is true. This was something that was put out there. Nancy Guthrie has requested that people search and check for surveillance cameras in a particular area. A neighbor to Nancy provided this to JLR Investigates, and he shares the map to us. Now, wouldn't this be something that she should have put on publicly for everyone to see? Well, one, you know, I know a lot of people were thinking that maybe they had something to do with this, and they're saying, well, she didn't put it publicly, so this must mean something. Probably means something, just probably not what you're thinking, right? One, if she's putting out information, that's probably, you know, if somebody was involved in something and they were putting out information, it's because they're trying to mislead or misdirect somebody into some direction or something. I'm not necessarily certain this fits that bill. And two, why wouldn't she be putting it out publicly? Maybe she does know something and maybe she is sharing it with a few people, but maybe was asked not to share it with everybody by law enforcement. So it may not even be her choice per se. And I don't even know if this is true, right? I don't know if this is true, that this in fact is what Annie put out there. So here's like a closer picture of it. And there are some spots here that are interesting. Now, I don't know if they put these spots here because that's how they had to manipulate the directions so that it would give off this exact route, right? So, meaning that if they would have put a direct route from Nancy's house to Bashas, that you probably get a different route. So there's a good possibility that the reason why they put in these specific points is because, one, that's what you had to do so that you could manipulate the route so it matches what you want. Or two, maybe there is something in those spots. Maybe they marked those spots for a specific reason. Either way, I did the same. And so I wanted to see where it is that it's going. What are they trying to do? What direction are they heading? Now, it appears that they're going through the neighborhoods to try to get to eventually 10. Right. I think they're trying to get on the highway. And maybe they have a path somewhere that can get them there, but where does 10 lead them towards? Arizona City, Casa Grande, Phoenix. If this is true, that's where I think they might be trying to do that. Now, according to this, I don't know if this is real or not either. Commenter on JLR's X account overlaid a pink in perimeter where the FBI asked people in the area to check their cameras. I don't know if that's true. If you know, I haven't seen it. Did the FBI or law enforcement put out an area like this? But let's just say they did. This route falls in line, with that. But I went through this and painstakingly went through every one of these houses to find the cameras that could potentially find, a perpetrator on this road. So I found a few. Let's see. So there's a camera right here. Let's look at these. I don't remember where all of them are at. But I have a camera somewhere on this house. Oh, I think it's actually this house. There it is. All righty. So there's the first one. It's that one, not that one. And then, which is right away. And then if they turn down this road here, it's right there. Okay. But there's not very many, guys. And some of them are kind of far away. Oh, I remember this one. So this one, I couldn't tell if there's actually one here or not. I went too far. Like that would face. Is this it? There's one where you can see from a certain angle. I don't remember where it was at. But it's on here somewhere. I marked them out all. I went through this, every single one of them. It was pretty painstaking. It sucked. But I was here for hours. Got one that's right there. And so there's cameras up here. Let's see. But there was one camera in particular that I thought was really interesting. I think it might be this one. It is this one. There you go. Because this one I don't think would have an effect based on like jammers and things of that nature. So if they did take this trip, I would suspect that sometime after 2:28 in the morning, there should be something passing by here. Now let's that was one of them, and then let's go to the spots that were marked. So this address here was marked. I couldn't find anything, but I found it interesting that the house right next to it was blurred out. And then this house here, it wasn't showing me anything. All the other places was up at 2025, but the earliest is now 2022. So I thought that was interesting. That was one of the spots that was marked. This was another spot that was marked on the map. And again, I think it could be to try to manipulate the map so that way it could pick up some things. But there's some cameras here all over the place too. Let me go on the side here. There's one right there. One right there. One right there. So if they went this way, this guy would have been seen. Now, if he didn't, there is a route to get around this building here and not be on camera, but that would be an indication that this dude was he drove there through there a while or a lot. And that's this way. So if he goes up this road here and then around here, you'll end up right here onto the highway. Either way, all of these major roadways that they come onto, there's no traffic cameras anywhere here. Down over here where they could have come out to as well, there aren't any cameras here, coming out. That's one of the things that I noticed, that this route does not come across one traffic cam. Not one. Now there are some cameras on this building, on these buildings here. And this is the this one was also marked as Greeno's Nail Salon, and back here is another camera. Oh, where was it? I know I saw it somewhere. Ah, too far. I want to go to the street. Yeah, I was looking at this earlier, and I was like, oh, look, there it is. I found it somewhere. It's somewhere on this building. There it is. Like I said, I went through this spot by spot, searching all over the place. It took me hours to do this. So I think I deserve a couple of likes for that, at least. But I found that one there. And then there's a camera here as well. Now, the doorbell cameras are interesting. See, there's one right there. Doorbell cameras are interesting. There's I found maybe one or two, but I have a doorbell camera and it doesn't pick up cars in the street. It's too far away. So I would doubt that that'd be the case, but there was like a couple of spots that did. But yeah, I mean, look, there's not very many cameras. And from there, I couldn't find one from there. Even around this school, I couldn't really find one. I suspect that there's cameras at this school. I just couldn't see them. And then once you get over here towards Bashis, there's cameras all over the place over here. Ish. I didn't see one on the road this way. All right. So when I came this way and I looked over here, I couldn't tell. I suppose that there's some. I would assume there's some somewhere. But when I was going through here, I just could not tell. And so if they're going this direction, and that's a big if, I don't know if that's to be the case. Which direction are they heading? To me, I think it's a clear path going through some more neighborhoods. And even if you're here, let's see. Is there a traffic camera here? No, there's not. It's a freaking stop sign. Oh my gosh. So you can continue. You can continue. I mean, I'm sure up to this point, this route here has gotten through without one traffic camera. It's wild. It's wild. But let's see. Let's look up the address for where the Kia was seen and see how that plays a role. All right. All right. So law enforcement said that this wasn't the camera or this Kia Soul that was driving around this area. But this wasn't it. This is not far away from Nancy's house. Makes you think that they do have something that leads them to believe that this is the direction that he went. Now, could that be because they have him on camera? There's certainly enough cameras there. Could that be because they have a path of cameras or Wi-Fi's going down at that time, where they're like, boom, this camera went off, this camera went off, this camera went off, which could show a path that leads out. I mean, I would say so, that you could get up to about, you know, have a pretty good idea if they're right here, right? And this camera goes out, which let me show you this one. If this camera doesn't capture it and it goes out too, that one up there facing the roadway, you can probably make this map up to this point pretty easily. And there's only, you know, if you're right here and you're going this direction, there's only one way you can go. You know what I mean? To get back onto this highway. So based on these cameras, now, if, you know, some other ones that maybe I just couldn't see, if those also, you know, do something or show something or have some sort of malfunction, maybe that helps some way over here. But I would reckon to believe that with these cameras here, if you could show that, like, if I was investigating this and I started, you know, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do this path, you know, especially if there's some sort of information, right, that people's cameras were going down, and it was these specific cameras. I'm going to create this path. All right, this is unique. Now, some folks will say Tommaso's house is right here on the way home, and that is true. You know, this person, all they would have had to have done is turn like right here, and then easily have gone to Tommaso's house. But then go from there where? Right? She's actively bleeding. And so what are you doing with her? And if she didn't survive, where are you taking her from here? And how are you getting out of your neighborhood also? Maybe you have a Wi-Fi jam or two or something, but how are you getting out of your neighborhood also without being seen on camera and stuff? Right? Now, I wonder if they have security cameras, or if they have, you know, security system, if they have a doorbell camera, or they have cameras outside where they disconnected that night. If they were, that's suspicious. If they weren't, do they show any notification of disturbances, of movement, of any of those things? Did somebody walk out of the house at a certain period of time? And if somebody jumped out of a door or window or something of that nature, you know, are there windows and a path that they could have gotten that they wouldn't have come in contact with their own cameras or notified detection of their own system if they have one? I don't know if they do or not. You know what I'm saying? And so, I don't know. But if, you know, and they dismissed the Kia pretty quickly. So that would lead me to believe dismissing the Kia that was this direction, not very far away, albeit as well, and around the same time, 8 minutes later, after the phone or after the heart rate monitor disconnects. How are they dismissing it so quickly? One, they have evidence that the guy went in a different direction. I think that's one of the main things that makes me believe that. And what that could that be video of a vehicle? It could be. I just wonder why they haven't released that description. At the very least, they don't have to release the video of the vehicle, but why not the description? I don't know. Well, guys, I'm going to answer y'all's questions. Put some stars so I know you guys are talking to me. There was one other thing I wanted to point out. Somebody had sent me another email, and it had to do with what was in the pocket. And they sent me some screenshots, and this is one of them, of the perpetrator turning to the side. And this is from Juanita Adam. And they did some manipulation to it. It's pretty wide. They believe that it could be a gun. I don't think it's the back part of the gun. Now, remember this. You see how this curves? And you see how the gun you know, imagine putting that in your pocket, and if that was sticking out, you know, the bottom part, because that's where they're going with it. This is the bottom part of a magazine, like that. Which, I mean, it doesn't mean that they're the same size, you know, but it's interesting, right? Now, the problem I have with it is, let me pull up my pictures real quick. Is this does not look like a gun. And this looks like the zipper tag that's sticking out that it could have been. So a gun has some curves and things of that nature. I'm not seeing that there. The gun look like you see the butt right here. So if the butt of the gun was here, the gun would be facing down this way, not having something stick out that way. Right. See the butt of the gun, it would be facing, like if that was what that was, it wouldn't fit here. And this doesn't make sense of what that is. No idea. You know what I mean? I hope that makes sense. So I don't think it's a gun. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's what that is. It's a zipper pull, and I can prove that's what I think it is. That's what I think it is too. The zipper hand, yeah, I think it's that. I don't think it's a second gun. Could it be tags on a glove? It could be. It could be. I think it would be more than likely. I would say I'd give it a higher probability of it being that than definitely a gun. I don't know how high of a probability, because when I look at the image, like this doesn't scream glove to me. This is too straight. If you look at gloves, there's curves to it to match your hands, because your hands aren't exactly straight, especially like the outer part of your, like where your pinky is, because it's either that part or it's the thumb, and that's definitely not the thumb. So it's got to be the pinky. I mean, I guess if it's folded like that, and maybe that's the middle finger, you know, but it looks pretty smooth. You know, he's moving around a few times. I don't see it bend. I don't see it like curve. I don't see any creases throughout this process. Something that I would expect to see out of a glove, like a leather glove, you know, with so much movement. I think if anything, maybe it feels like it has more form to it. I would say like I don't know why, but I'm thinking like a money pouch, or like one of those pouches that, even if it's for like a square pouch. Let me see if I can pull up what I'm talking about. Let me put a leather one, because it looks leather, it looks plasticky, almost like a wallet. I would say like a wallet-ish. Let's see, check this out. Now imagine if this was, let me change, I could change it to black. Yeah, something, maybe not this exact one, but something shiny that's like this. This is something that maybe even has a zipper sticking out of the bottom of it. You know, something like this. Which maybe perhaps it's a pouch to carry some tools or something of that nature. It doesn't have to be a money one, but this is what I think of. You see how it's shiny? And then I think what we're seeing is we're seeing the opening of the pocket, and it's cutting off a piece. It's obstructing most of the view of what's in his pocket, and it's giving the illusion that it's an antenna. But I think there's more to it. You know, when I look at this looks like it continues, like it's bigger. That's just my thoughts. I could be wrong. It could be an antenna, Like if it comes back that it's an antenna, I wouldn't be like overly surprised. Now I do see a lot of like whatever is in there, it's got some girth to it. Like what it's doing to his jacket. Alrighty. I think it's the banding on the pocket, maybe. Yeah. I did a video on that. That was one of the last. I think the last video I did on was what Monk Intrigue did, talking about this, and that's what gave me the idea to blow it up and to look at it, frame by frame and things like that. This just looks really big. I mean, compare it to the gun. Look at how wide that is compared to the gun, or even the zipper. It just seems too wide to be an antenna. It seems too wide for me, but I mean, I could be wrong. I've said it a few times. There's two different types of people out there. There's the type of people that are okay with their questions not being answered, and there's people that are not okay with their answers being questioned. And I'm not one of them. So if you got questions, I'm more than happy to bring them up, and walk them through. Does it make sense? What would we have to? What should we see? What kind of behavior should we see? Because to me, I think there's more than just the face value answer. I like to look at things like the game Sudoku, where if you play the game Sudoku, you have 9 squares, and in those 9 squares, there's 9 boxes, and what you have to do is there's 9 lines that are going vertically, 9 lines that are going horizontally as well throughout the entire puzzle. So basically what you have to do is you have to number everything 1 through 9 going horizontal down, and then in each individual 9 inch or 9 block square, right? There's 9 block squares. And so you can't have like 2 1s in the first block, even if they're on a different horizontal and vertical line. You can only have 1. And so why I say that to say this is that we might see something that looks good in this one block, but it may not match when you try to look at it horizontally or vertically. So that's what I try not to do. So I try to ask questions like who, what, when, where, and why. So when like something comes up with like, all right, I think this is Tommaso. Like, okay, well, why? He's wanting to do this. All right, well, what kind of person is he? Who is he? This person seems pretty calm. This person seems confident in what he's doing. It screams experience to me. Has Tommaso ever kidnapped anybody? Does he have a criminal record? Does he have a burglary record? This guy appears to have those things. No, he doesn't. Okay. Could he have purchased or hired a hitman? Well, I think he would have to have hired a professional. This isn't somebody I think that you randomly meet somewhere and be like, hey, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You go and do this for me and I'll do something for you. And this is somebody inexperienced. This is somebody experienced again. The way they're acting, the way they're behaving, their movement. This does not scream a first timer. Maybe not the abduction part. I don't know. I would not be surprised if this isn't even the first time they've taken somebody. But breaking into somebody's house or knowledge of getting into someone's home, this does not seem like that. Like somebody who hasn't done this before. If Tommaso's doing this for some sort of insurance scam or whatever the case may be, I expect there to be different behavior, some more anxiety, some more nervousness, walking a little bit quicker, trying to get out of there as fast as possible, nervous tics, etc. Especially also if he met somebody and they were doing it for him as a favor, or even if he was paying somebody that he knew close. I don't see that here. I would assume he'd have to hire a professional. That would take some things like, where's he getting that information? How is he making contact? How is he paying for that? Because that comes with a price, usually before the kidnapping occurs or whatever it is that they planned on doing occurs. So there's a lot of things that go into it to say, all right, could it have been, or is it still? I don't know the answer to a lot of those questions. I don't have his financial records. I don't have any of those things. I assume law enforcement do, and I assume law enforcement would have looked into it, and I assume that based on Ashley Banfield's reporting that they thought that Tommaso was a suspect at one point, and that based on their behavior, being at the house and taking in the vehicle, etc., I think those are all clues that they possibly did. However, we also have to take into consideration the result of that investigation. If the investigation initially appeared to be that they were suspects and they went through the process of getting them, run through the mill there, and the result of that investigation, law enforcement has come out to say that they're cleared and they're not involved, I think that should also take a role into, whether or not we think they did something is the result. We can look at things from the face value, like I mentioned with Sudoku. It sounds good right away. They investigated him. But we're not taking into consideration the results. And I think we need to before we start accusing and stuff. So just my opinion, just my thoughts. Let's see. I'll answer a couple more questions. If I see any stars attached, put them there so I know you're talking to me. Do you think that Mark Kelly is having it held up because it's illegals and is open to? Could there be some political? I don't know. I think at this point it's embarrassing to the department and to probably the FBI and anybody that is responsible for employing, some of these guys or what's the word I'm looking for? Oh gosh, it's when endorsing, there we go, or endorsing like nanos or anything, or this department at this point. It's not a good look, what they've gone through. So I wouldn't say that at this point, if they were to solve it and come up with an answer, even if it was something that was somebody from Mexico or whatever, and it doesn't align with their political views, I think they would want to solve it so that they can get the black eye off of their face. You know what I mean? From looking so bad. And maybe at that point, not put out a lot of information, like where we've seen in certain cases where things are omitted, or we've seen in certain shooting incidences where manifestos and stuff are held secret because people don't want that information out. So I would think that if that were to be the case, if there was any political aspect to this, then we probably will see something like that, but I don't think it would prevent them from trying to solve it. Let's see. Keychain hanging out of the pocket. That could be it. Could be it. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you. Righteous. Thank you. Thank you. And that would make sense, like a little wallet to keep small screwdrivers, etc. Here's the thing, though, right? And this goes back to the flowers. If he had that on him, if he had something to carry little tools with him, why didn't he use that to remove the doorbell camera? Especially if he's aware and understands that the green light blinking and not blinking is an indication that somebody's watching, right? Goes back to my thoughts that maybe perhaps that's not what he was trying to do at that moment. Maybe he was just trying to send a message. Because if he did have those on him and that's not what he was using, because we can go to a lot of things, right? He had the reef to the right, to the left that he could have used to conceal the doorbell camera, and he had rocks that he could have used to knock it off. That would have done a lot better job than the flowers, etc. And so, just saying, I think he may have wanted to be seen. Pima Sheriff, FBI North, Savannah, has ever said that Nancy's cell phone was in her automobile in the garage. It was in the home with her on the bedstand so that her pacemaker would be next to it. That's true. That's true. But, that means also that it was with her throughout the entire night, I would assume. So earlier when she went through the garage, when she was at Tomasa's, when she was everywhere, I'm assuming that if she had her phone with her, there's going to be a record of that. And that phone and that pacemaker is going to tie her personally and her person being next to the phone so that nobody can say that somebody grabbed the phone to make it appear one way or another and Nancy not be there. It's impossible. Make it add up, Sudoku. Sudoku is fun. I love that game. I love some weird games, though. I really do. Our monkey, I just watched your video about a detective contacting you. Oh, are you on the I've not heard of your channel. I'm gonna check you out. Righteous Monkey. I'm gonna look you up, my man. I'm not familiar. Let's see. Steelers fan. She was here earlier, but it's getting kind of late. And so she tends to fall asleep early. But if you want to see her, she was making a really funny face on her last video. She was so go check it out on Married to the Hobby. You won't be disappointed. Hey, another Steelers fan from Pittsburgh, but not the Steeler fan. Good to see you guys. What's the blocking device look like? Let's see. I'll see if I can find one real quick. Let me see. Because the interesting thing is a Wi-Fi jammer side antenna. Because that's the thing, right? If it is an antenna, it's on the side of it. Let's see. Is there one that looks similar to what could be there, right? Because there's more than just the in my opinion, there's more than just the fact that it's sticking out. Let me show you. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about. All right. So there's also the space between where this antenna stops and the bottom of the pocket. And this antenna, if it is an antenna, is facing straight up, meaning that the walkie-talkie would be down here, and that would be one small radio walkie-talkie or whatever. Now, a jammer with something on the side of it that could fit there would be something like this. This could easily fit in his pocket, have the antenna sticking straight up, and it not affect anything. And it still maintain that look. And also, he could have other things in his pocket and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I mean, this is the only thing I could find with a side antenna on it. I couldn't find a radio. I couldn't find a walkie-talkie, but I could find Wi-Fi jammers. Not just one, multiple. So I'm not completely against the idea that it could be one of these. You know, this antenna port goes right on the side. So $24. You know, some people are saying, you know, the email said, I don't think he's going to spend a lot of money. That's not a lot of money. Not a lot of money. If you had to guess what type of job door guy has, what would you guess? Mechanic, electrician, technical? I think he's IT. I think he's tech. Probably, maybe even security. A security salesperson or installer. What's in the backpack? Man, there's so many things it could be. There's so many things. Could be clothing, could be a lot of things. Could be cleaning supplies. She was doing something weird. I asked her afterwards, what are you doing? Like, I'm going to leave it. And she's like, all right. But the same someone who used locally here in Dallas at the movies to prevent phone usage during a movie to cause a huge lawsuit because someone missed a call from, ooh, that sucks. All righty, guys. Well, that's going to do it for me tonight, guys. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We've had a really awesome show. I'm going to be back on probably tomorrow night, if not if Sunday. So I do plan on coming back on, but before the end of the weekend. Please hit the like button, share, comment, subscribe. It really does help out the algorithm. Even if you don't agree with me, you know, let me know why. You know, what are your thoughts? I'm not going to criticize anybody for their theories or anything like that. I keep an open mind, and, you know, I don't know everything in this case. You know, it's different when, like in the Brian Koberger case, We had an arrest. We had a probable cause affidavit. We had information from law enforcement. We were able to deduce some things based off of that stuff, right? In this case, we're not there yet. And so I think all options are still pretty heavily on the board. I think some maybe outweigh others, and I think some are less likely than others, but that you still can't, discredit them. And so until we get more factual information, I think all options have to stay on the table. And we have to ask those questions, and we can't be afraid of any type of question, even if it's something that we don't agree with. Like, for instance, I don't think, Tommaso or Annie had anything to do with it, but I'm not going to shy away if somebody asks me a question, especially if they come up with a great point. Like, hey, how do you explain this if it's, if it's not them? And if somebody has one of those, I'm definitely bringing it up, and we'll have that discussion. So let me know in the comment section. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. You guys know what to do. I appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. I'll see you guys next time.